I think I accidentally found the most addictive watercolor painting, and it is so easy. Any beginner can do this. Okay, now I do have to show you something. I started painting these bookmarks for fun, and now I am completely hooked. I literally cannot stop making them, and I have a whole stack to prove it. So, unless you're ready to get addicted to watercolor painting, this video might not be for you. If you are ready for oodles of painting fun, then go grab your watercolor supplies and let's get started. Here I have my watercolor paints, my paper towel, and some clean water. And then of course we need some brushes. Now last week I showed you 3 easy, awesome paintings that you can do on cards that only take 5 or 10 minutes to do using round brushes. You can go back and watch that and use some of those designs on these bookmarks as well. But just to change things up a little bit today, I'm actually going to be pulling out some angle brushes. I'm actually going to be pulling out some angle brushes to show you some of my favorite flowers to paint using them. These are from my Craftamo subscription boxes. I have several different sizes of angle brushes, including a 1/4 inch, a 3/8 inch, and a 1/2 inch angle brush. All of the brushes that you see me holding come in my 12-month watercolor classes in a box. I'm not going to go over all of those details right now, but I will leave some information and links in the description of this video, along with information and links to any of the other products you see me using today, just in case you'd like to check out anything further. And you know what? Even though I'm focusing the main portion of these paintings using angle brushes today, I might also pull out a #1 rigger as well, just to help me get some fine lines or stems on these flowers. I'm going to be showing you how to use these angle brushes on some bookmarks. Like I say, I had an absolute ball making these, but you could use these ideas for cards or gift tags or even larger paintings instead if you'd rather. I do have a couple of different bookmark options here as well. I went on Amazon and purchased a watercolor bookmark making kit. It came with pre-cut watercolor paper, tassels, little plastic coverings that you can put your paintings in, so everything that you need to make the bookmarks. These are actually what I started out with. I made a whole bunch of them and gave some of them away. I had so much fun, but unfortunately these were a little bit smaller than I was expecting, and I was worried you may not be able to see it very well on this tutorial. So I also bought this little set. It didn't come with watercolor paper this time though, so I did have to cut my own, but the sleeves are larger. It still came with some tassels. I think I actually like the tassels and the colors from the other kit a little bit better. There was definitely more color options. I don't know if or how I would ever use the bright orange that comes in this, but like I said, the sleeves for these bookmarks were larger, so that was a plus. It also gives me more room to play around and paint on them with. There's probably a ton of other options out there on Amazon as well. Just make sure that you double check the sizing so that you get the right size that you want. And I will put the links for the 2 sets that I bought in the description of this video as well. And I have to say, I actually got the idea for the bookmark sleeves from one of you viewers who actually likes to share their paintings with me on Facebook. I absolutely loved the idea of getting plastic sleeves for the bookmarks to go in. I've never tried that before, so kudos to my viewer out there. You know who you are. All right, enough of that. Let's get to painting. Like I say, I'm going to be using the larger size sleeves to make my bookmarks so that it's a little bit easier for you to see what I'm doing today. I did cut my own watercolor paper, but I was able to cut several pieces out of just one sheet of 9 by 12, so I did make a lot out of just one sheet of paper. All right, maybe I'll start out with a 3/8 inch angle brush first. The 1/2 inch may be a little bit larger than I'd like for this size of bookmark, but if you want larger flowers, you can definitely use that too. We're going to start out with some very simple and basic brush strokes and then work our way to some of the more complicated things that you can do with the angle brush. That way, if you've never used an angle brush before, you are going to have a good start and get some good practice in with some simple brush strokes first. Now, something that you're going to see me doing a lot today is basically a double load of my brush. This just creates a little bit of gradient or dimension within the brush stroke. However, if you're new to using the angle brush, you don't have to do that. You can just load your brush with one color. But I'm going to show you just in case you'd like to give it a try. But basically what I'm going to do is rinse out my brush so that pretty much all of the paint is out and just leave a tiny hint of paint or tint in my brush. I usually just call it a dirty brush. And then what I'll do is take the longer half of the bristles and just swipe that right through the darker paint color, just the longer half though. Basically, this is going to leave a lighter shade of paint within the majority of the bristles, and then the darker paint is just at the very tip, and that will spread out through the brush stroke just a little bit. But like I say, if you don't want to do this double dipping, then just go ahead and load the brush with a paint color and you're good to go. For the brush stroke, I'll take my brush and hold it with the longer point of the bristles facing downward, and then I'll simply pull out and maybe slightly up on the bristles to create this diamond looking shape. This can take a little bit of practice to get the hang of, but don't worry, we're going to be doing this a lot today and you will get it down. And once as you've got the basic idea, these type of flower paintings can be done really, really quickly. Now with these flowers, I'm just creating a bundle or a bunch of flowers on one little stalk so that each stroke is basically representing its own individual flower. Now I don't have any pencil marks or anything on my paper. I'm just going with the flow and putting these wherever I feel like they look good, but I am keeping in mind where I feel like that main stem line or stalk might go in just a minute, and I'm kind of trying to paint these flower strokes nearby where I picture that stem line going. I'm probably going to have multiple flower stalks within this one painting also, rather than just having one all by itself. And I'll probably paint about 5 to 6 brush strokes for each little flower bundle. All right, easy peasy. Now that I've got a whole bunch of these little brush stroke clusters on the page, I'm going to rinse my brush off and pull out the #1 rigger and some olive green paint, and then I'll start painting in the main stem lines. I'm just going to take this fairly slow and make sure that each stem line either connects to another stem or makes it all the way to the bottom of the page. And you may have to paint around some of the flowers that are already on here. I'm just going to make sure to follow through with each of these lines. Now I'll take a touch of olive green paint and just paint a little bit at the base of each of these brush strokes and connect them to the main stem line if they didn't quite touch it already. This is just going to tie everything together. Okay, very good. This is a great start. Something that we can do to kind of finish off the look is to take an angle brush again. Maybe I'll use the smaller 1/4 inch angle brush this time, and I'm going to use that same basic brush stroke to paint in some leaves. This time I'm not doing a double gradient, I'm just using some full-on color, and then I'm going to pull that stroke out maybe just a little bit farther to make it slightly longer and more thin. In all of these bookmarks I'm doing today, I'm really not going to paint a lot of greenery in here. I'm just keeping it very minimalistic, and I'm focusing mostly on the flowers, but you're welcome to paint longer leaves, fat leaves, more leaves, whatever you want to try. I'm just giving you ideas, but you can use your artistic creativity and do whatever you want with that. And actually, that is it for our first easy bookmark. Like I say, you could try different colors. This is extremely simple. It's also really pretty. So I'm just going to set this off to the side and let's try another angle brush bookmark. This is also going to be very easy, and we're just going to build off of those same strokes that we were practicing and take it to the next level. I think I'll change my color up a little bit and maybe use some alizarin crimson this time. I'm going to have two piles of this color, one that's a little bit lighter and more watered down, and one that is darker and more concentrated with pigment. Then I'm going to be double loading my brush in basically the same way that we just did. You can either rinse it out gently and use barely any paint in the bristles, or you can use some of that lighter, watered down alizarin crimson on the tray, and then just swipe the top half of the bristles in that dark color again. Now I'm going to hold the brush in the same way that we just did, but this time instead of just pulling straight out on the stroke, I'm going to curve and turn the brush and finish the stroke off with the shorter end of the brush to create a nice point. Again, this is going to take some practice to get the hang of, so pull out a scrap piece of paper to practice this on if you need to. But like I say, once you've got the idea down, you can really paint these pretty quickly. In fact, I've shown this exact brushstroke in greater detail in some other video tutorials. I can put some of those in the description of this video if you'd like to get a little bit more help and practice on this type of flower. All right, very good. Once as the first halves of the flower buds are completely dry, then we can come back in here and add in the second half of the rosebud. The good news is we're going to be loading the brush in the same way that we just did, and the stroke is going to be very similar as well. But let me go through this really nice and slow so you can see exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to start with the brush sitting right along this line here. Then I'm going to twist my wrist just a little bit and pivot the brush around, making sure that the short end or back end of the brush is following and touching right along that first brushstroke line. Then when I get to the end, I'll turn the brush a little bit again and finish it off with the shorter end, leading the way to a nice pointy tip. This is probably the hardest part of these flowers, but it really makes an awesome looking flower bud. All right, that is it for the flower buds. Look at how cool these are. And because we did them one half at a time, that creates this perfect little separation between the two halves, making it even more bud-like looking. All right, I'm going to pull out that rigger brush once again and paint in the stems of these flowers next. I'm going to start with a little bit of olive green paint at the very base of the flowers first. Then when I'm ready, I'll take some of the olive green paint and paint in some really nice, thin, delicate looking stem lines. You of course can paint them thicker, there's nothing wrong with that, but like I say, for me today, I'm kind of trying to focus more on the flowers themselves rather than the greenery. I hope you're enjoying the tutorial so far. The angle brush can be a little bit tricky, but it really is one of my favorite brushes to use when I'm creating quick, one-stroke flowers. All right, let's switch back over to the angle brush. I'll pull out that 1/4 inch one once again, since this is a little bit smaller in size. Then I'll use it to paint the greenery around the heads of the rosebuds using the same brush strokes that we did within that first painting, making them a little bit longer and more thin. You can really whip out these bookmarks quickly with both the flowers that I'm showing you today, as well as the ones that I did last week. So if you haven't watched that, make sure you go back and check it out. And if you're finding that you're enjoying my painting and teaching style today, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. I try to have a lot that are beginner friendly like this one, all the way up to more advanced paintings. That way I have something for everyone, no matter what your skill level might be. Next up, let's add in a few leaves here and there. Now, these leaves, I'm actually going to be painting them the exact same way that we did the rosebud heads, but instead of just painting one half at a time and waiting for it to dry before I paint the other half, I'm just going to do both of those strokes right now and create a nice round leaf shape. In my practice paintings, I added a lot more greenery than I'm doing today. I can show you some of those in just a minute. I didn't add very much greenery this time. I'm keeping things pretty minimal. And if you need to, you can pull out that rigger brush and tie these leaves into the stems. Here's one of my bookmark practices so I can show you as an example, but this one I did fewer flower heads and more leaves. These are both really pretty, they're just a little bit different. So whatever you want to try, and of course you can try different colors if you want to as well. Okay, let's go ahead and set that off to the side and just paint one more pretty little angle brush bookmark. I'm going to pull out that 3/8 inch brush once again, and this time as I do my gradient of colors, I think I'm going to try two colors this time rather than just one. So I'm going to pull out a little bit of Gamboge. This is going to be very light and very watered down for my base layer color, and then I'll load my brush up with the Gamboge and swipe the longer tip of the bristles into the Alizarin crimson that's already on our tray. Then for these flowers, I'm going to paint individual flower petals. I'll start the stroke out sort of in the same way that we've been doing, but this time instead of ending the stroke with a sharp pointy tip, I'm going to keep pulling that brush out, ruffling it or waving it around in sort of a pivot motion, and then I'll pull it back down to the center to form that petal. I'm choosing to paint these flowers in more of a side-facing view, so I'm only going to do about 4 of these petals on each flower head. However, if you'd rather, you can do more of an open-facing flower and do like 5 or 6 petals instead, just whatever you want to try. All right, that seems pretty good for the larger flowers. I might also add in a bud or two in here as well. I'll paint these just like I did with the rosebuds or the leaves on that last painting, just using the 2 strokes together. Okay, it's time to switch over to the rigger brush again, and after these flower heads are dry, we can go ahead and add in the base of the flowers to connect all of the petals together, and then we'll use that rigger brush and some olive green paint and add in some nice thin stem lines. Now, on my practice piece, I had longer, more thin grasses to go with the flowers. This time, I'm just going to use the 1/4 inch angle brush and maybe paint in some really fine, thin leaves using just that basic first brush stroke that we practiced. I actually think I like it better with the longer leaves, so I will pull out that practice so you can see what I'm talking about, and then you can decide which way you want to do it. Here's a quick example of how it looks if you choose to do longer, thicker grass lines or leaves. So whichever way you want to try. And that, my friends, is actually it for these 3 different awesome, easy angle brush flower ideas that you can paint on bookmarks, that you can make for fun or to give away. And I'm telling you, this is seriously so enjoyable. It's probably the most fun I've had painting in a long time. And once as I got started, I literally could not stop. I find that sometimes I just need a break from painting something that's big and fancy, and doing something quick and simple but still beautiful like this was just pure joy. And adding them to these plastic sleeves really just finishes off the look and makes them feel professional and beautiful, plus it protects the watercolor painting itself. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.